Howdy, gamers, individuals, elder brothers, imperial protectors. We're gonna compile a list of names to go at the front of the video that's just fucking 30 seconds long. Um, Another chapter, you can see my setup has kind of changed. I'm not recording on the Mac anymore. That's done. I've moved fully over to the PC. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the Mac, but it has to go. It can't it can't it's just not gonna happen anymore. I'm done with it. It's been pissing me off to be quite fair. Um, so yeah, that's where we're at. But hopefully quality doesn't change. I've also moved over to DaVinci Resolve for editing. So we'll see if I can kind of learn that software and maybe introduce some more uh, you know, quality into my content. But yeah, that's all I got. We'll get into the propaganda. Yay. It's everyone's favorite. We love propaganda. 15. Democracy in the three main fields. A proper measure of democracy should be put into effect in the army, chiefly by abolishing the feudal practice of bullying and beating, and by having officers and men share weal and woe. Once this is done, unity will be achieved between officers and men. The combat effectiveness of the army will be greatly increased, and there will be no doubt of our ability to sustain the long, cruel war. Apart from the role played by the party, the reason why the Red Army has been able to carry on in spite of such poor material conditions and such frequent engagements is its practice of democracy. The officers do not beat the men. Officers and men receive equal treatment. Soldiers are free to hold meetings and to speak out. Trivial formalities have been done away with, and the accounts are open for all to inspect. In China, the army needs democracy as much as the people do. Democracy in our army is an important weapon for undermining the feudal mercenary army. The policy for political work in our army units is fully to arouse the rank and file, the commanders and all working personnel in order to achieve three major objectives through a democratic movement under centralized leadership, namely, a high degree of political unity, better living conditions, and better military technique and tactics. The three checkups and three improvements now being enthusiastically carried out in our army units are intended to attain the first two of these objectives through the methods of political and economic democracy. With regard to economic democracy, the representatives elected by the soldiers must be ensured the right to assist, but not to bypass, the company leadership in managing the company's supplies and mess. With regard to military democracy, in periods of training there must be mutual instruction, as between officers and soldiers, and among the soldiers themselves. And in periods of fighting, the companies at the front must hold big and small meetings of various kinds. Under the direction of the company leadership, the rank and file should be roused to discuss how to attack and capture enemy positions, and how to fulfill other combat tasks. When the fighting lasts several days, several meetings should be held. This kind of military democracy was practiced with great success in the Battle of Panlung in the northern Shenxi, and in the Battle of Shishaishuang in the Shanxi Chashar Hopei area. It has been proved that the practice can only do good and can do no harm whatsoever. In the present great struggle, the Chinese Communist Party demands that all its leading bodies and all its members and cadres should give the fullest expression to their initiative, which alone can ensure victory. This initiative must be demonstrated concretely in the ability of the leading bodies, and the cadres and the party rank and file to work creatively, in their readiness to assume responsibility, in the exuberant vigor they show in their work, in their courage and ability to raise questions, voice opinions, and criticize defects, and in the comradely supervision that is maintained over the leading bodies and the leading cadres. Otherwise, initiative will be an empty thing. But the exercise of such initiative depends on the democracy in party life. It cannot be brought into play if there is not enough democracy in party life. Only in an atmosphere of democracy can large numbers of able people be brought forward. Anyone should be allowed to speak out, whoever he may be, so long as he is not a hostile element and does not make malicious attacks, and it does not matter if he says something wrong. Leaders at all levels have the duty to listen to others. Two principles must be observed. Say all you know, and say it without reserve. Don't blame the speaker, but take his words as a warning. Unless the principle of don't blame the speaker is observed genuinely and not falsely, the result will not be say all you know and say it without reserve. Education in democracy must be carried on within the party so that the members can understand the meaning of democratic life, the meaning of the relationship between democracy and centralism, and the way in which democratic centralism should be put into practice. Only in this way can we really extend democracy within the party, and at the same time avoid ultra-democracy and the laissez-faire which destroys discipline. Both in the army and in the local organizations, inter-party democracy is meant to strengthen discipline and increase combat effectiveness, not to weaken them. In the sphere of theory, destroy the roots of ultra-democracy. First, it should be pointed out that the danger of ultra-democracy lies in the fact that it damages or even completely wrecks the party organization and weakens or even completely undermines the party's fighting capacity, rendering the party incapable of fulfilling its fighting tasks, and thereby causing the defeat of the revolution. Next, it should be pointed out that the source of ultra-democracy consists in the petty bourgeoisie's individualistic aversion to discipline. When this characteristic is brought into the party, it develops into ultra-democratic ideas politically and organizationally. These ideas are utterly incompatible with the fighting tasks of the proletariat. 16. Education and the training of troops. Our educational policy must enable everyone who receives an education to develop morally, intellectually, and physically, and become a worker with both socialist conscientiousness and culture. As for education for cadres, whether at work or in schools for cadres, a policy should be established of focusing such education on the study of the practical problems of the Chinese Revolution and using the basic principles of Marxism-Leninism as the guide, and the method of studying Marxism-Leninism statically and in isolation should be discarded. For a military school, the most important question is the selection of a director and instructors, and the adoption of an educational policy. A school of 100 people certainly cannot be run well if it does not have a leading group of several people, or a dozen or more, which is formed in accordance with the actual circumstances and not thrown together artificially, and is composed of the most active, upright, and alert of the teachers, the other staff, and the students. All officers and fighters of our army must improve their military art, march forward courageously towards certain victory in the war, and resolutely, thoroughly, wholly, and completely wipe out all enemies. Equal importance should be attached to the military and political aspects of the one-year consolidation and training program which has just begun, and the two aspects should be integrated. At the start, stress should be placed on the political aspect, on improving relations between officers and men, enhancing internal unity, and arousing a high level of enthusiasm among the masses of cadres and fighters. Only thus will the military consolidation and training proceed smoothly and attain better results. As for the method of training, we should unfold the mass training movement in which officers teach soldiers, soldiers teach officers, and the soldiers teach each other. Our slogan in training troops is, "Officers teach soldiers, soldiers teach officers, and soldiers teach each other." The fighters have a lot of practical combat experience. The officers should learn from the fighters, and when they have made other people's experience their own, they will become more capable. As for the training courses, the main objective should still be to raise the level of technique in marksmanship, bayoneting, grenade throwing, and the like, and the secondary objective should be to raise the level of tactics, while special emphasis should be laid on night operations. 17. Serving the people. We should be modest and prudent, guard against arrogance and rashness, and serve the Chinese people, heart and soul. Our point of departure is to serve the people wholeheartedly, and never for a moment divorce ourselves from the masses, to proceed in all cases from the interests of the people, and not from one's self-interest, or from the interests of a small group, and to identify our responsibility to the people with our responsibility to the leading organs of the party. The organs of the state must practice democratic centralism. They must rely on the masses, and their personnel must serve the people. Comrade Bethune's spirit, his utter devotion to others without any thought of self, was shown in his boundless sense of responsibility in his work and his boundless warm-heartedness towards all comrades and people. Every communist must learn from him. We must all learn the spirit of absolute selflessness from him. With this spirit, everyone can be very useful to the people. A man's ability may be great or small, but if he has this spirit, he is already noble-minded and pure, a man of moral integrity and above vulgar interests, a man who is of value to the people. Our Communist Party and the Eighth Route and new Fourth Armies, led by our party, are battalions of the Revolution. These battalions of ours are wholly dedicated to the liberation of the people and work entirely in the people's interests. All our cadres, whatever their rank, are servants of the people, and whatever we do is to serve the people. How then can we be reluctant to discard any of our bad traits? Our duty is to hold ourselves responsible to the people. Every word, every act, and every policy must conform to the people's interests, and if mistakes occur, they must be corrected. This is what being responsible to the people means. Wherever there is struggle, there is sacrifice, and death is a common occurrence. But we have the interests of the people and the sufferings of the great majority at heart, and when we die for the people it is a worthy death. Nevertheless, we should do our best to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. All men must die, but death can vary in its significance. The ancient Chinese writer Zuma Chen said, "Though death befalls all men alike, it may be weightier than Mount Tai, or lighter than a feather. To die for the people is weightier than Mount Tai, but to work for the fascists and die for the exploiters and oppressors is lighter than a feather." 18. Patriotism and internationalism. Can a communist who is an internationalist at the same time be a patriot? We hold that he not only can be, but must be. The specific content of patriotism is determined by historical conditions. There is the patriotism of the Japanese aggressors and of Hitler, and there is our patriotism. Communists must resolutely oppose the patriotism of the Japanese aggressors and of Hitler. The communists of Japan and Germany are defeatists with regard to the wars being waged by their countries. To bring about the defeat of the Japanese aggressors and of Hitler by every possible means is in the interests of the Japanese and the German people, and the more complete the defeat, the better. For the wars launched by the Japanese aggressors and Hitler are harming the people at home, as well as the people of the world. China's case, however, is different, because she is the victim of aggression. Chinese communists must therefore combine patriotism with internationalism. We are at once internationalists and patriots, and our slogan is "Fight to defend the motherland against the aggressors." For us, defeatism is a crime, and to strive for victory in the war of resistance is an inescapable duty. For only by fighting in defense of the motherland can we defeat the aggressors and achieve national liberation. And only by achieving national liberation will it be possible for the proletariat and other working people to achieve their own emancipation. The victory of China and the defeat of the invading imperialists will help the people of other countries. Thus, in wars of national liberation, patriotism is applied internationalism. What kind of spirit is this that makes a foreigner selflessly adopt the cause of the Chinese people's liberation as his own? It is the spirit of internationalism, the spirit of communism, from which every Chinese communist must learn. We must unite with the proletariat of all the capitalist countries, with the proletariat of Japan, Britain, the United States, Germany, Italy, and all other capitalist countries, before it is possible to overthrow imperialism, to liberate our nation and people, and to liberate the other nations and peoples of the world. This is our internationalism, the internationalism with which we oppose both narrow nationalism and narrow patriotism. In the fight for complete liberation, the oppressed people rely first of all on their own struggle, and then, and only then, on international assistance. The people who have triumphed in their own revolution should help those struggling for liberation. This is our internationalist duty. The socialist countries are states of an entirely new type in which the exploiting classes have been overthrown and the working people are in power. The principle of integrating internationalism with patriotism is practiced in the relations between these countries. We are closely bound by common interests and common ideals. The people of the countries in the socialist camp should unite. The people of the countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America should unite. The people of all the continents should unite. All peace-loving countries should unite, and all countries subjected to U.S. aggression, control, intervention, or bullying should unite, and so form the broadest united front to oppose the U.S. imperialist policies of aggression and war, and to defend world peace. Things develop ceaselessly. It is only 45 years since the Revolution of 1911, but the face of China has completely changed. In another 45 years, that is, in the year 2001, or the beginning of the 21st century, China will have undergone an even greater change. She will have become a powerful socialist industrial country, and that is as it should be. China is a land with an area of 9,600,000 square kilometers and a population of 600 million people, and she ought to have made a greater contribution to humanity. Her contribution over a long period has been far too small. For this we are regretful. But we must be modest, not only now, but 45 years hence as well. We should always be modest. In our international relations, we Chinese people should get rid of great power chauvinism resolutely, thoroughly, wholly, and completely. We must never adopt an arrogant attitude of great power chauvinism and become conceited because of the victory of our revolution and certain achievements in our construction. Every nation, big or small, has its strong and weak points. 19. Revolutionary heroism. This army has an indomitable spirit and is determined to vanquish all enemies and never to yield. No matter what the difficulties and hardships, so long as a single man remains, he will fight on. Give full play to our style of fighting. Courage in battle, no fear of sacrifice, no fear of fatigue, and continuous fighting. That is, fighting successive battles in a short time without rest. Thousands upon thousands of martyrs have heroically laid down their lives for the people. Let us hold their banner high and march ahead along the path crimson with their blood. Be resolute, fear no sacrifice, and surmount every difficulty to win victory. At a critical moment in the progress of the northern expedition, the treacherous and revolutionary policies of party purge and massacre adopted by the Kuomintang authorities wrecked this national united front, the united front of the Kuomintang, the Communist Party, and all sections of the people, which embodied the Chinese people's cause of liberation, and all its revolutionary policies. Thereupon, unity was replaced by civil war, democracy by dictatorship, and a China full of brightness by a China covered in darkness. But the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people were neither cowed, nor conquered, nor exterminated. They picked themselves up, wiped off the blood, buried their fallen comrades, and went into battle again. Holding high the great standard of revolution, they rose in armed resistance, and over a vast territory in China, they set up people's governments, carried out land reform, built up a people's army, the Chinese Red Army, and preserved and expanded the revolutionary forces of the Chinese people. You have many good qualities and have rendered great service, but you must always remember not to become conceited. You are respected by all, and quite rightly, but this easily leads to conceit. If you become conceited, if you are not modest and cease to exert yourselves, and if you do not respect others, do not respect the cadres and the masses, then you will cease to be heroes and models. There have been such people in the past, and I hope you will not follow their example. In the fight to wipe out the enemy and to restore and increase industrial and agricultural production, you have overcome many difficulties and hardships and demonstrated immense courage, wisdom, and initiative. You are models for the whole Chinese nation, the backbone of the victorious advance of the people's cause in all spheres, pillars of support to the people's government, and bridges linking the people's government with the great masses. We, the Chinese nation, have the spirit to fight the enemy to the last drop of our blood, the determination to recover our lost territory by our own efforts, and the ability to stand on our own feet in the family of nations.